Thank you so much. And at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Arshad, Dr. Swapna Nair, my very good friend, and Dr. Harshali, as well as the organizing team of Sri Netra Eye Care under the aegis of KSOS for having me here. This is my third time here, and it is always a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to also congratulate the team for the theme, which is exceptional, and that is the highlight of the whole scientific program. I'll be talking to you about reflections from cornea practice, challenges, choices, and change. And as Harshali said, mistakes, misses, and master strokes is what that I'm going to emphasize on. So sometimes what happens is that some of the people they do surgeries or they have cases and they refer them to you. And this part of the movie I called challenges from your table to mine, and I would be showing you some situations which were challenging. So audio is not there. So these were cases of abundant surgeries. A case of Descemet's membrane detachment, which looked like this, and in fact, patient was referred for endothelial keratoplasty. But when we took the patient on the anterior segment OCT and the intraop OCT microscope, we actually found that there was a Descemet's membrane detachment, and this is 4 weeks after the surgery. So here we've instilled air bubble, and as you instill the air bubble, the Descemet's membrane goes and attach to the overlying stromal layers, and this causes the clearing of the cornea. And this is the follow-up at 3 days, and notice that there's a shallow detachment still present. So the important message is that you can redo in these cases and inject one more bubble, and so the patient then achieves a visual acuity of 6 by 6 without actually having to undergo a corneal transplantation or endothelial keratoplasty. This was a second case where the surgeon was doing the case and the whole disc of Descemet's membrane came out. This is just a simulation of the same during phacoemulsification. So 2 hours later, the patient was put on our operation theatre table, and it was a challenge to see which side is up and which side should be down, because the endothelium should be looking down. So important thing in this is to get a configuration like this of the Descemet's membrane, that is the biceps curl upwards. And once you get that configuration, which can be seen here, which also can be seen if you stain the Descemet's membrane with the trypan blue dye, and the air is injected, so the patient's own Descemet's membrane gets stuck to the back of the cornea, and the patient has a good visual acuity of 6 by 6. I call it auto DMEC because it is the patient's own Descemet's membrane which has been used. Now, this was a case of brittle cornea syndrome with spontaneous rupture, flat AC, and there was an intumescent lens which was touching the endothelium. So just as the surgeon made the incision, the whole incision gave way, and the right eye had been lost 10 years ago because of spontaneous rupture and phthisis bulbi. So this was the picture on the anterior segment OCT, and this was the picture when the patient presented on our table. So the notice that the incision has become very large, mainly because of the fact that it is brittle cornea. So if you make one incision here, the whole thing rips down. And of course, because rhexis was also done in this case, so and the lens matter is there, which was aspirated. Subsequently, you have to also tectonically support this cornea. So after doing this, we are doing a deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty by making a pocket peripherally, and then using a donor cornea, which is healthy, and reinforcing the patient's own brittle cornea, which can be seen here. So this is the patient's brittle cornea, and this is the tectonic cornea from a healthy donor, which is supporting the patient, and the patient is one-eyed. So there can be cases which are abundant surgeries which are referred to you. It is important for the primary surgeon that he timely diagnoses the problem and immediately refers to you. And I think as a secondary surgeon, important thing is prompt and immediate intervention, optimal expertise, techniques and tools, whatever you have, and also important to help not only patients but your own fellow colleagues as well. The second challenge that I would be showing, which I faced, and in fact, it was a challenge which I faced after being 17 years into cornea practice, is this. So this was a case of fatal conjunctivitis. 70-year-old NRI from London who had just conjunctivitis, was diagnosed as allergic keratoconjunctivitis treated on topical steroids and topical antibiotics, but despite this, the patient did not respond. And subsequently, the allergic conjunctivitis converted also into a keratitis-like picture. So important thing to note is that there's corneal thinning, there's a reticulated margin which can be seen here, over here, and there is guttering. When we did confocal microscopy, we picked up hyphae and we started netamycin 5% 2-hourly. But the patient still did not respond and it worsened. On culture, non-coagulous staphylococci were present and anterior segment OCT showed marked thinning, and despite antibacterial and antifungals, the patient did not respond and went on to perforation. So systemic antibiotics and antifungals were also started. PL was present, PR was inaccurate, and a therapeutic penetrating keratoplasty was planned. On fungus, culture, the colonies appeared to be those of Aspergillus. So this is the case when we actually took up the case. The patient also had thromboembolism prior history, so he had to be taken under general anesthesia. You can't do it under a block. All the exudates were removed, and we needed also an anesthetist, a cardiologist to monitor this case. The INR had also to be optimal because otherwise the patient would bleed. So subsequently, penetrating keratoplasty was done. A large graft was done for the patient, and therapeutic keratoplasty in the immediate postoperative period looked good, but over a period of time, again, there was a recurrence of infection. So postoperatively, as you can see, initially it looked all right with the pressures which were controlled, but then 2 weeks after therapeutic keratoplasty, again, there was a problem, and so ophthalmoplasty opinion was sought, and the patient went into panophthalmitis. So IV ceftriaxone, vancomycin, and voriconazole, all three of them were given intravenously. Subsequently, there was florid retrobulbar inflammation, marked proptosis, and cavernous sinus thrombophlebitis, which was seen. So as a result, a partial exenteration for the patient was done, and the specimen of therapeutic keratoplasty as well as what was exenterated was then sent for genetic analysis, because none of the organisms and none of the treatment that we had given for antibacterials in the form of antibacterials, antifungals, topical or systemic, seemed to be working. So lid sparing partial exenteration under GA after it was done. Fungal hyphae was still positive. But when we did the blast search, we found the organism to be Pythium insidiosum. And this was the first case of Pythium keratitis, which was actually reported from our center. 2 weeks later, patient had stroke, lesion was contagious with thrombophlebitis, and the patient expired. A classical picture of what the Parsons tells you when you leave a corneal ulcer and it does not respond would happen. So this was a case which taught us that the bugs can be smarter than us, despite the fact that we had a cornea specialist, ophthalmoplasty, pathologist, microbiologist, radiologist, cardiologist, geneticist, the team from PGI, team from AIIMS and RP Center. Despite that, we could not save the patient because we could not diagnose this new organism in time. As far as Pythium insidiosum is concerned, important thing is the reticular margin that I showed, the guttering that may occur, and you do have to do a 3-prong attack, which means medical therapy in the form of itraconazole, caspofungin, voriconazole or netamycin, which has been tried, radical surgery, and people have even used immunotherapy. And of course, topical linezolid, which seems to be the treatment for this condition. So sometimes the microbes can be smarter than all of us, and we have to be careful, especially if new microorganisms are being isolated. The change that we have done in our management is this, that is, how do we deal with the corneal vascularization or combating corneal angiogenesis? Now, there are several ways of dealing with the vascularized corneas. The cornea, of course, is the window of the eye and should be as clear as this and non-vascularized. But there can be problems of limbal stem cell deficiency, operated penetrating keratoplasty. Then we have to manage neovascularization because there can be loss of best corrected visual acuity. And even if we do corneal transplants for these cases will fail because of presence of vessels. So I'll be showing you techniques which even general ophthalmologists can do to combat corneal neovascularization. These include the use of subconj Avastin, which can be seen here, and the vessels are present, so one can use subconj Avastin. And we actually uh, presented this series of pre-op and post-op subconj Avastin in 20 eyes, and also presented in the American Academy of Ophthalmology. This was a case of lipid keratopathy with intacts with vessels. So you remove the intacts and you inject subconj Avastin, so the vessels become ghost-like vessels. We now also do fluorescein angiography for such vascularized corneas, and when we inject the dye, notice that there is fluorescence which would occur in the conjunctiva as well as in the cornea. And these are the serial changes in angiography post Lucentis injection, which was given in this case. Notice how the vessels have become ghost-like vessels, unlike the very angry-looking vessels here, and the visual acuity also improves in these cases. Again, this is a case where fine needle diathermy has been done, and basically what is done is that this is a needle which is being taken on a suture, and diathermy is being used to just touch this needle. So when there are leash of vessels, you have to go parallel, but when there's a single vessel, then you have to go into the vessel. Another technique is use of mitomycin intravascular chemoembolization of mice. So mitomycin is being used here, directly injected into the vessel, so that the vessel again becomes a ghost vessels and the vascularization is taken care of. Amniotic membrane transplantation also takes care of the vascularization. In this randomized control trial that we showed very clearly. So in cases of acute SJS, if you do amniotic membrane transplantation, the eyes are white like this. But if you don't do amniotic membrane transplantation, then you can have vascularized corneas. So using AMG is again one way of combating the corneal angiogenesis. Again, doing SLET in cases of limbal stem cell deficiency is another way of combating corneal angiogenesis, where the pannus is removed, the amniotic membrane is pasted onto the host after removing the pannus in a case of limbal stem cell deficiency. Then this limbal lenticule is taken from the fellow eye, cut into small pieces, and these are the pre and the post-op pictures of SLET 6 months, where vascularization is decreased and the cornea also begins to clear and good visual acuity is there, especially because the central cornea is clear. This is a case follow-up 12 years where the best corrected visual acuity improved from hand movements to 6/6. And again, most of these cases do well, and even if there's some amount of opacification, you can still deal with them by doing lamellar keratoplasty. Now, when both the eyes are involved, you can't take the limbus from the fellow eye, so you take oral mucosa, and in this case, again, pannus is removed, the amniotic membrane is taken. This mucous membrane is removed from the lower lip and cut into small pieces and is pasted onto the ocular surface. And after COMET also, the results are very good, which can be seen here. Hand movements close to face, bilateral case improves to 6/24. In these cases, if you do grafts, they are very high risk for corneal transplants, so the best is not to do grafts for them because they are bound to fail. And again, we've published our results on COMET as well. So as far as combating corneal angiogenesis is concerned, there are various ways of dealing with it, which I have shown you, such as anti-inflammatory drugs, ablation methods, gene therapy, and ocular surface procedures like COMET, CLET, etc. So this is the change that one can do in their practice when one has to combat corneal angiogenesis. And I think what we are doing is basically for the patients, and I would conclude by showing you this video, which will clearly, this video is titled 2 Eyes, 2 Lives, and basically this was a case of a young female, 28 weeks pregnant lady with bilateral peripheral ulcerative keratitis, and the patient was not cleared for surgery because of high chance of preterm labor and fetal lung immaturity. So we sent the patient on medical management, and IV steroids were basically given in this patient for fetal lung maturity, and an ophthalmologist, neonatologist, obstetrician, anesthetist were roved in from the AIMS team department. Fetal monitoring is being done by the neonatologist. There was a gynecologist also in the event if there was a preterm labor, an anesthetist, And we are trying to do bilateral sclerokeratoplasty here. Of course, it was done one after the other, but I'm showing you just to conserve time, both of them simultaneously. So bit by bit, the fibrinous membranes which are present were removed, and iris which was adherent was separated, and sclerokeratoplasty was done so that the grafts were sutured with Tenzilo monofilament nylon sutures. And 2 months later, the patient came like this. When she initially came, she was accompanied by her husband. But when she came now, these were the right and the left eye, and she was able to see with both the eyes with a visual acuity of 618, 612 bilaterally. And she came with her child after the child was born. So this was the beginning of the new life, and whatever we do is actually for humanity and for the patients to see, and this was really gratifying because the patient was also able to see her own child. And this was the beginning of the new life. So thank you, and I would like to invite you to Midterm AIOS Conference, 25th to 27th September, Ranchi. It is a city of waterfalls. So all of you are invited, and the last date for your submissions to the Ahmedabad AIOC annual conference is still there, 31st May 2026. So please do put in your submissions there, 18 to 21st February 2027 in Ahmedabad. Thank you so much for having me.